you might lose some participants.
Well, if they don't appreciate it, they shouldn't be on the call.
All
This
right.
is how we roll.
I agree.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining another Community Builders Learning call. Today, we have the privilege of having David Spinks with us. He is the founder of CMX and VP of Community at Bevy. He's had 10 years, I'd say, is that right, of community building experience. So it feels like what he doesn't professionally, and that's just professionally. So what he doesn't know about community, I assume, is not worth knowing. So for those of you here, the intention for this webinar is really for those of you who are trying to build community around your businesses, and maybe you're struggling, or you're just thinking about starting the idea of building community. Hopefully David here can give you some answers and some thoughts and tips about how to kickstart off that community building process, or also just trying to maintain and manage that. What does that mean, particularly if it's linked to a business? Rather than just have David under pressure to just talk for an hour, it would be very nice and very kind of you to supply any questions that you have about your own experiences about community building. If for those of you who've just joined the call, please type in, just say hello in the chat, and also please say where you're calling in from so that we know, we get a feel for everyone here in the room. And it looks like we've got a nice selection of people from across the globe. Well, we've got here, we've got Dave from San Francisco. That's great. We've got James from Prague. We've got Kevin from Brighton in the UK. We've got Yanina from Zurich. We've got Don from Pender Island. We've got we've got loads of people from different places. I'm not going to take up too much time going through it. And we've got Priya from Mumbai as well. Excellent. I think we've got loads of different time zones here. So I'm going to go through these questions and just see what's in there so I can prepare in my head. In the meantime, I am going to hand over to David, who I think is that direction on your screen. Maybe just give a bit of an intro to people, for those people who don't know you, for those who are not aware of your work, maybe it'd be nice to know a bit about what you do now with CMX, and maybe a bit of a story about how you got to building communities professionally, because I'm curious about that as well.
Sure. I'll try not to make it too long. But today I'm the founder of CMX. CMX is an organization dedicated to helping community professionals succeed in their work. So I started it 5 years ago as a conference called CMX Summit. At that time, I had been working professionally in the community space for about 5 years. And had started side projects like thecommunitymanager.com, and had worked on community as director of community for a company called Zarly. I helped Udemy launch their community program. I built community for France's biggest tech conference called Le Web. Excuse me. And so I had a bunch of experience building community professionally, but everything that I learned by doing. And by just slowly learning and connecting with other people who are doing that work, because there just wasn't anywhere to go to get training. There weren't really big events for community professionals. No one even used the word community professional until we started using that at CMX. The community industry wasn't a thing. And so we started CMX with the goal of bringing together all the people that are doing this work, connecting them, helping them learn from each other, letting them know their work is really important, because I've always believed that you can see the trajectory of how business is going. It's just continuously becoming more and more about customer empowerment, customer influence, taking care of your customers, making them feel engaged, making them feel connected. You know, it just keeps moving more and more in that direction. And so I've always said that community is the future of business. The ultimate end for business is that your customers aren't just consuming, they're actually contributing to your business, and you're building a community of people who are involved, who are actually a part of the community, who actually feel belonging. And so we started that conference and we told everyone at that conference, your work's important. There's a lot of other people doing this work on a huge level. Put some really incredible people on stage from companies like Airbnb and Lyft and Apple. We had Dave McMillan, who created the sense of community theory. He came and spoke at that first event. So it was just, you watch people walk into that event and look around, kind of not knowing what to expect. Every other event they've been to was a marketing event that maybe had one panel about community, or they talked about community, but what they were really talking about was social media marketing. And they walked in this event, looked around, and saw over 300 people who were doing the same work as them, who understood what their work was. And you could see, it was like, the reason I do this work is those moments where you see people who felt very isolated and alone feel connected and feel like they belong and feel like they're a part of something. There's, I think, no better feeling in the world. And that's what we saw at that event. It was just kind of this magical energy in that room. And so I was running a different startup before that. I'd started a company called Feast. It was an online cooking school, so very different space. And it was going well, not that well. We decided to wind that down, and I switched my full-time focus over to CMX. That was 5 years ago, and now we're about to host our 10th conference, which is crazy. Which will be in 1 month, actually, in 4 weeks in Redwood City in the Bay Area, where we're going to have over 1,000 community professionals coming together, 3 stages, over 65 speakers. Like, it's clear to me now the community industry has arrived in a very big way, and it's been just incredible to see it grow. But there's still like an insane amount of work to do to help us better define this industry and teach this work and help businesses build community in a thoughtful, meaningful way, and in a way that's actually impacting the business goals so that they can justify investing in it. And so that's a lot of the work that we do, is just helping define that industry.
And I'm curious, when you say about, so it feels like it's still quite early days in this community building profession, for want of a better term, or community builder approach. And you talk about defining more what it means. Do you have your own, very personal, clear definition of what you feel the community building professional approach is about?
Yeah, I think if I could simplify it, it's somebody who's responsible for connecting people and creating opportunities for them to contribute, right? So if you're in a business, let's say you're Airbnb is built on contributors. It's built on hosts being able to successfully put their apartments and homes on the platform, successfully host guests, create a good experience. And so as a community professional, and they have a huge community team there, their job is to make sure that those hosts are connected to each other so they feel engaged, they feel like they're a part of something, they feel like there's this shared identity, and then create opportunities for them to contribute, whether that's just contributing to the platform as a whole, coming to events and sharing their knowledge there. It's all about education. It's all about creating shared knowledge. And so that's the community team's job, is that, right? They're giving them an opportunity to contribute and making them feel engaged so that they stick around. So they're driving retention. And you can apply that to any business, because every business is going to have something that people can contribute to. Right? And we break it down. We use a space model to break down the 5 areas that a community can drive value for a business. Support, S is for support. So it's your customers contributing by supporting each other, answering questions for each other, solving problems. Product, your customers are contributing by giving you feedback and insight for your product, helping you innovate and improve what you're delivering. Acquisition, so your community members are becoming advocates and they're helping you grow your community, or the community itself is drawing in new traffic, new people into becoming customers or becoming members of your community. Contribution, so that's like Airbnb or Wikipedia or Duolingo, all these platforms that are built by the community. All those tools, the content on those tools are built by the community. And so then the community members are contributing what actually makes up the product. And then engagement, which is essentially retention, right? It's they are contributing to a community, and as a result of feeling like you're a part of a community and feeling like your problems are being solved and you're connected to people, you're more likely to stick around as a customer for a longer time. Maybe you increase your investment in that company. And so those are the 5 areas: support, product, acquisition, contribution, and engagement. So you can remember the space model. And that's how we break down how community drives value for a business.
Brilliant. Nice and simple. Thank you. So just a reminder for anyone who's just joined, if you have any questions for David, whether it's just even about what he just mentioned now and the space model, and you wanted to dive into that, or you had specific questions yourself about your own community, please post them into the chat. If you're happy with that, Dave, we could dive into a couple of questions now to see, unless there's anything else you wanted to share us along the space model. I didn't want to interrupt your flow. Good. Okay. So what we have, we might need some context from some of you. So please either type it. If I ask you, could you type into the chat, or ideally, if you could come on, I can invite you to share live on the call. So question I have from Hannah, who's joining from Paris. She's interested in the best ways to build a brand community outside of Facebook and Instagram. So Hannah, are you still around? I'm trying to see if I can find you. If you have any more context for us, are you free to join us and to share a bit more detail? Maybe not. If not, I don't know. Is there anything there, Dave, that you can work with in terms of what it means to not use some of these more established platforms to build community?
Yeah. So, you know, it's an interesting time right now because Facebook has essentially just, you know, it's just kind of taken over community on the internet, right? It's like so much of the internet's interaction happens on Facebook. And so as a result of that, it's become harder to build community elsewhere because, you know, so much of our attention, so much of our time is going into these bigger platforms. It's going into Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, that if you know, I want to launch a forum on my own website, now we're automatically going to be like changing habits in a big way. We're asking you to go straight to our site rather than relying on the distribution that we get on a platform like Facebook. And so it creates this really tough challenge for every business to make a decision. If you host it on Facebook, for example, and you do a Facebook group, right? And I'll say, like, a Facebook page isn't a community. That's a fan base. That's an audience. All right. That's you broadcasting messages out. Maybe they comment, but they're not really interacting with each other. For it to be a community space, people have to be really interacting and having conversations with each other. Same thing with Instagram. You're not building a community on Instagram. You're going to build a following. You're going to build an audience. You're going to build a fan base. And so if you're building community, you need to host spaces where people can talk to each other. So a Facebook group is really one of the only spaces that you can build community on these large social platforms. And the trade-off there is, if you use a Facebook group, you're going to get more engagement because you're tapping into the distribution and the engagement that Facebook already has. And they're promoting Facebook groups very heavily right now. They tweak their algorithms so that groups are showing up a ton right now, right? That's their whole new focus on groups and community. But the trade-off is you don't own that community. If you're hosting it on Facebook, you don't own it. Facebook owns it, right? And like, you might think you own it because you gathered all the people and you're creating all the content and everyone's there because you did it, but you don't own it. They could, in a day, shut you down. They could switch their algorithm and decide you're never going to get any more traffic. They could switch up features that makes it no longer useful for your community purposes. And so that's why I think it's really important that we're all thinking about, especially for a business context, how are we creating own spaces for a community where we can make sure that we own the connection with our customers, with our members, we own the data, and we can control the experience. And so, you know, to do that, it's a challenge, but there's a world of platforms out there. right? Like Mighty Networks is a really good option if you're trying to transfer from a Facebook group into an own platform. That's basically their whole pitch, is like, they built like a better Facebook group off of the platform. And we use that for our pro community. So we have our Facebook group, which is our free open community. And then we try to convert some of those members into our pro membership, which is a paid membership. But that's our owned community. It's a lot more curated. It's private. So it's just a higher quality conversation. There's Discourse if you want a forum. There's really big, amazing enterprise software like HireLogic, Salesforce, Khoros, Vanilla, Forums. There's a whole range of platforms. We published a guide a while back about the different platforms you can use. And then it becomes about like utilizing the tools that platform offers you through email and different notifications to like keep people engaged and keep them coming back to the community. It is going to be harder. It is going to be an uphill battle compared to a Facebook group, but long term, it's going to be a lot more valuable.
Cool.
I hope that answers the question.
I'm hoping. I think that you've given her options other than Facebook and Instagram, and I think you nicely covered the pros and cons of Facebook and having a community there. A question that sprang up to mind when you were talking there. There's a whole host of options that you could choose from when wanting to go with a non-Facebook or Instagram approach to your community.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice or things for so someone who's just thinking of launching a new community somewhere else? Because each of these platforms have different sets of features and different things that they offer, what a budding community builder should really think about in terms of the core functionality that they need to be focusing on when creating a community? Is there any kind of something for them to use to get clear as to how to choose?
It really depends on the kind of community you're building and the context and the business you're building it for. If you have a large business and you're going to have thousands and thousands of customers participating or millions, you need a pretty comprehensive platform that helps you manage a community at scale. If it's a support community where you want people answering questions that customers have, then you need a platform that supports that kind of infrastructure so that people can mark questions as answered and make sure you're tracking everything to make sure all questions are answered. If you just want a more casual group, something that's just really simple, then you can consider just using a Facebook group. You can use Slack, you can use Mighty Networks, you can use Discord, you can use Telegram, although I wouldn't recommend it for any group bigger than like 100 people. And so there's lots of different simple tools. A lot of them are free that will allow you to very simply start building your community and still, you won't be able to customize them very much, right? Like the big enterprise platforms, you can fully customize and design, make it fit your brand. But the simpler ones, you can't customize a Slack or a Discord, but you will still be able to own data. You will still be able to track things properly. And the one good thing with Discord and Slack, for example, are they have an engaged audience. If people are already on Slack for work, then maybe it's easier to keep them engaged in your Slack community, especially if it's a professional community. Like our community started their own Slack. Like there's a CMX Slack that the community started and they run it themselves because for some people that was more engaging and more convenient, that format, right? So there's like a full process you can go through to really think about what platform's right for us based on what your budget is, what kind of interactions you want your members to be having in that space, how quickly you need to get it up and running, and do you need it to be customizable for your design? Are you charging for it? Do you need to have training or other specific features in there? Or like Mighty Networks does have a training module, so you can sell training products. And that one cool thing that Mighty does is they're trying to help community organizers monetize as well. And so you can charge for membership. So you can actually charge people to be a member. You can also charge members for training modules that you put into the program, into the community. And so for a lot of people who are just going from like, I'm running a Facebook group for fun, I want to turn this into a business, that's a really good option.
Cool. So there's some things that came up for me there is really understanding what the value of your community is, what you're trying to deliver. And I'm thinking of your space model there in terms of what elements there that are most present for you. There's the size that you're starting with, the data, how important it is to manage that data and own it. And then the transition of how are these, where are they at the moment, and how are you going to get them into where you want them to be, and how big of a transition that's going to be. So that's super useful.
How much time do you have too, right? Like if you don't have a lot of time, go with a platform that already has distribution, because to build community on a platform that doesn't have distribution, like Facebook or Slack or Discord rather, like you're going to have to spend a lot of time building engagement there. So if you don't have that time, you just want to be more passive, maybe choose a platform with distribution.
Lana actually mentioned another thing here is like also understanding what you need to measure. What is it that needs to be measured Lana, do you want to elaborate a bit more? Do you want to unmute yourself?
Hi.
Hi, Lana. Good to see you.
Good to meet. From my end, it's also important to look at a platform where you can tricks. Like with a lot of the client partners that we have with DreamSeeDo, they're into training, so they're using the platform to give professional development training, so to be able to get some metrics or data as to how people are using the materials, or be able to create like pre-test, post-test. This is something that we find as very important. So it goes back to, why are you creating the community for? And what are the metrics of success that are needed for you to say that the community is thriving, and how can you find that in the platform that you're using?
Brilliant. Thank you, Lana.
100%. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be building community for a business, like you 100% have to be measuring your work. You have to be measuring your community. You have to be measuring the impact your community is having on the business. And that's another big challenge with Facebook groups and some of the free tools. You're not going to get a lot of that data. You're not going to be able to connect your community to a CRM platform or somewhere where you're, tracking customer information and retention and things like that. So Lana's 100% right. That's a huge consideration for your platform. And if you're building community for business, I actually wouldn't use a platform if it's going to really hinder your ability to measure it and report on the value of it.
Thanks, David. Awesome. So Don has his hand up here. I assume he would like to ask a question live. Do you want to unmute yourself, Don?
Hi, Carlos. Hi, David. Well,
hey, Don.
Yeah, I had a question, but I kind of changed questions with what you've said so far. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. I have a Mighty Networks, and I started it in January, and mostly I'm using it for its value as a teacher because they allowed courses now and groups and all those things. But I'm at the point where I really need to, get my message out there. So I was sitting here thinking about starting a Facebook group because I only have a Facebook page. I have about 6,000 people that engage in my page. I get pretty good engagement on my page, but I'm ready to, Mighty Networks is all set up and I feel really good about it. And so I'm ready to really market it, but that's my biggest step next. And so I'm just sort of wondering, David, about, there's sort of a format for posting on Mighty Networks to get people engaged and stuff. Is that, and how do you, this is something I find challenging. I work on the Mighty Networks and then I got to go to Facebook. And so, do you have any suggestions for driving traffic to your Facebook group that's slightly different than running a community? Like a community, we have a whole year plan and we follow the seasons, and I could take that stuff and put it into the Facebook group. But do you understand what I'm asking? Is that I find they're kind of two different things. One is really a training place where the questions and the posting and everything's designed to help people master something, and the Facebook group feels more like a social thing, still, you know, dealing with your subject matter, but not quite as focused as the Mighty Network.
And your question is, how do you drive traffic or drive membership to your Facebook group, or how do you drive your Facebook group members to your Mighty? Or
no,
both?
to drive to the Facebook group, because I haven't created the Facebook group yet. I've got a Facebook page with about 6,000 or 7,000 people, but I didn't make a group.
What's the purpose of the Facebook group? Why do you need a Facebook group?
Well, because you were saying that this Facebook's giving more attention to the groups, and people engage more in a group than they do on just your business page.
Yeah, but you know, if you're starting a group in that way, you're essentially looking at it as a marketing channel, which, you know, it's kind of how we are starting to set things up at CMX as well. It's kind of like our Facebook group is a really good place for beginners and people who are just kind of getting involved, and it's like an entry point into CMX. And then we, you know, incentivize them and motivate them to come to our conference or take our training program or join our pro membership. And so you can do it that way, but again, recognize that like a Facebook group is going to take a lot of time to manage. So is that the best way to grow your Mighty community? Maybe. What are the alternatives to growing it? Can you do a newsletter, right? Like, I'm a huge fan of newsletters. It's like the old thing that just keeps working. It just, you know, you own that data. You have a touch point with people every single week or every month, however often you do it. You're curating it. It's thought leadership, and you can track it directly to say like how many people are coming from our newsletter and signing up for our training and for your Mighty network, right? So maybe a newsletter is a really good option versus a Facebook group, versus, you know, your Facebook page, versus advertising, right? You have all these different channels you can use to essentially drive growth for your community. And you need to decide which one is going to be the biggest impact on the actual results you're trying to see. Actually look at the numbers. How many people do you think you can reach through those different channels? How much time is it going to take you? And make a decision, and then see if maybe you can run a test and see if one of those channels is going to work better for you than other channels. Right. You can also look at ambassador programs as another growth channel, right? Can your existing students become, can they refer new students to your program? So when you get into marketing, it's really just about testing different channels and seeing what's going to work really well for driving people to your product.
Yeah, so I only have about an email list of about 780 people. So, and I do fairly consistent communication with them. But I feel like I need to get my numbers up because and they've been around for quite a long time. So that's, I mean, I reach out with Facebook ads, and that seems to work somewhat in bringing people to my website or to now Mighty Networks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like you're already testing out a few different channels.
Yeah. So you brought the group up, so that just made me think about that possibility, only in that there is that place for the real beginner to my work, and the Mighty Networks was really designed more for actually engaged students. The only way you got in right now is to take my foundational course or become a mentee. Yeah. I don't, you know, I didn't have another option to get in. So
you can try it, right? And you can also set up a Facebook group, get it going, and then set up volunteers to be moderators and to engage a group like Fabian and Sasha did with the community builders group, right? There's now Carlos and Lana and everyone contributing to helping run these calls and build engagement. So, you know, maybe you can launch it, see if it starts attracting people, start building that engagement, get your students in there, get the right people in there. That can become a good growth channel. Then you need to figure out what content are you creating in the Facebook group for driving people to Mighty, which can be hard and not always easy to track either, right? Because maybe now they just want to stay in the Facebook group. They don't feel like they need to move over into the other one. We've had that challenge with CMX because we spent 5 years building our Facebook group. Our Facebook group's awesome. It's amazing, right? It's super active. It's very supportive. And then we're like, hey, pay for our pro membership. And we were like, why? This is great. Like, I don't need to. So really understanding the different value that you're offering in each community, being able to articulate that very, very clearly, and then developing regular content that you can put into the Facebook group. Maybe you like do like a training student spotlight every week, or a clip from a training program every week, something that's just constantly reminding them that like they should go and take this training. And that's kind of why this group is there.
Do you think it would work to just put it into the business page? I do get, like I said, I do get fairly good response to my posts in my business page, but I don't.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, to grow your group, Facebook will throw like some traffic to you and people searching for groups, but it's not going to happen on its own. You still have to put in the work. We link to our Facebook group on our site, in our communications, on our social media, in our emails. We're constantly letting people know, like, hey, you can join our Facebook group. That's a great place to join the community and participate. And then it's now it's starting to happen organically. The way the group started was from our conference. It was the group for our attendees to talk to each other, and then we just opened it up. So that was a really good way to kind of like spark momentum and engagement. And then it just kind of built up from there. So an event could be another good thing to do. If all your people are remote, maybe do an online event to like spark the Facebook group and launch it, get everyone in there as a place to talk around the event, and then just open it up and keep building it from there.
Cool.
Thanks. Yep.
Lots to think about, Don.
Yeah, lots to think about. Yeah, always. Never an easy answer.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. To mirror what Don, we have the similar kind of experience. What you're saying with Dave is like when you have a Facebook group and you want to move them onto another group, there's the behavior change, and then there's what's the value, and then if there's a lot of value already in where you are, it's really hard to get people to move somewhere else. So having an understanding of everything you said there is really useful. Just takes a lot of thought and implementation.
Yeah, it takes time. And if you're the only one running it, it's hard.
And that's it. I think this is the thing that sprang up for me, is like when you are a small team, thinking about adding yet another group to look after is something to seriously think about, because it's going to be even more time and energy that you probably don't have.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'd like to move us on to Jay. Do you want to come on the call and share your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, David, for doing this. Very helpful.
Sure.
So let's see how to formulate this. I have a Mighty network, running it for about a year and a half now. Originally, it started as, it was kind of a support offer on the back end of an online course, but it evolved into the main offer. Dropped the courses, the focus is now the community, which is what interests me most. Now, the focus originally was on business systems for small business owners. So the courses were Asana and Trello courses, and you would implement all the systems, lead gen, social media, all of those things. And you know how Mighty Networks has an icebreaker question functionality. And I asked people, what is the thing you want to take from this? And their answer was typically, I want to see how other people are doing things behind the scenes in their business. I evolved the community from there to sort of encompass some other areas around it, like goal setting, establishing habits, mindset, etc. And I think I've expanded it too much. And my thinking now is really, I identified from that initial onboarding that the interest was people want to see how others do things in their business behind the scenes. Specifically, how do I use Asana to manage client projects, etc. Would you say it's a good idea to just really simplify the community down to that one thing that people said they wanted most, and really drop everything else, make it known as the one place where you can see how others are doing things behind the scenes? Have we lost David?
Oh, have we lost David?
I think we did.
Oh, hopefully we'll get him back.
I think my question must have been really boring.
Well, this is
difficult. I think, Carlos, you should just answer it now.
Yeah, Carlos, your turn, because you're actually familiar with it.
Could you recap the question?
No, what I'll add to it though is
Yeah.
I had a conversation with David about this concept of intentional work communities.
Yeah.
Because he said he was part of one. It was there he's back.
Ah, there I am.
Cool,
Sorry about
okay.
that. Wi-Fi just completely crashed on me. Sorry
No
about
worries, you just saved my bacon. I thought I was going to have
Yeah,
to
because
like...
Carlos wasn't paying any attention to what I said. So
that. So the last thing I heard was you were asking people why they're there, why they're in the group, and they said, and then you froze.
Okay.
I froze.
Oh, right. Okay, so you missed everything. Cool.
I guess.
I can ask the question better this time. They said they want to see how other people are doing things in terms of systems behind the scenes in their business. They want to learn, kind of just-in-time learning, see how Bob, the SEO consultant, is using SEMrush to do his keyword research, that kind of thing. Really practical. Oh, you're frozen.
Oh, he's frozen.
He's frozen.
Oh, no, he's back.
He's back. Is he back?
I'm back. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Did you miss some there as well?
A little bit, yeah. One more time. Sorry.
So people said they want to see what other business owners are doing behind the scenes. They want to see how I'm managing client projects, how I'm doing it. Yeah. So what I got people to do as the primary activity was to create like a Loom video showing how you do your client management, for example. The question is, would it be a good idea to just really simplify the community down to just that? Because I think I overcomplicated it with things about goals and habits and book club and productivity tools and the whole deal.
Okay. So the question is...
And one more thing. You might recall we chatted in the CMX group a good while ago about an intentional work community that you were part of that has shut down.
Yes.
Some of the thinking of the group and the evolution of it has been an intentional work community where the things that matter get done. So I've kind of used it all to facilitate people doing their most important work. And the way that I'm now looking at doing that is showing how you do these essential business things behind the scenes. So the question is, would you focus on that single aspect and eliminate everything else and really just be known as the one community where you see how other business owners do things behind the scenes?
He doesn't like that question at all.
I'm super cursed. I'm sure he's got enough of it by now, I think.
I'm going to have a crack at sort of sharing our experience of this. And it seems my interpretation of the question is, where is the value? Where is the real value? Where can I focus my time and energy so that the community, the members, get the value they want? And there's an aspect of, and we've done this in ourselves, is like a volume equals value. The more stuff you give them, the more valuable it will be. And what I've seen a lot of the time is that actually more volume actually means a little bit more confusion.
Yeah, more volume. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. More stuff. So I'm just trying to mute Felicia because
Yeah, because I know you guys do kind of weekly co-working calls and webinars and a whole variety of things. And I'm sure sort of Pareto principle style thing, there is a particular subsection of that your members get most value from.
Yeah. And it is a bit of a hunt, I think. So from a very kind of intellectual perspective, the more specific and the more clear your value proposition is, the better, I think. It's just knowing that when you have that arrow and the point of the arrow is pointing at the right part of the target. Rather than David, have you managed to jump on?
Yes, I'm on my phone now. I guess the Wi-Fi in our office has just completely crashed, and everyone's very upset. So it's not just me. Sorry.
At the bottom of
Sorry
Mazar's
about that,
like
everyone.
knees.
You would think in San Francisco we would figure out how to make Wi-Fi work, but we're still struggling. So sorry about that. So what I heard was you're asking, should you make your community focused on that singular purpose versus kind of doing all those different things?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you all discussed that a little bit, so I don't want to like repeat what others said, but I mean, I think the only thing I'll say there is like, probably, right? If you feel like it's too complicated, then there's a good chance it's too complicated. You have the best feeling for your community and whether or not it's working well and how it's going. And if you're feeling like, this is too much, people don't really know why they're here or what they're supposed to do, then there's a good chance that you need to simplify. I would validate that assumption by getting on the phone with some people in the community, talk to some people who have been really active, talk to some people who haven't been very active, and find out why. Find out what they're really engaging with, what really works, right? Like a community is like a product. And you're always looking for what's really working in your product and what can you cut, right? And like Instagram comes to mind for me where, right. Well, yeah, it is for sure. And so Instagram comes to mind for me where they built a check-in app. That's what Instagram started as. It was like Foursquare and it was a check-in app. And it was like not really working and there was like too many things for people to do, but they found that people kept using the photo feature over and over and over again. They loved the photo feature and they had like a couple filters that people just love to use. And so they did some research and they're like, all right, like let's make that the product. And now Instagram's one of the largest networks in the world. So like look at what's worked, try to identify what is working and hone in on that. And don't be afraid. Like we're constantly cutting things in CMX. We're constantly trying new things. We were doing office hours every week. People weren't really, started to not really engage with them that much. So we cut them. It's great. Like your community wants to see you cutting things that aren't working and they want to see you continuing to innovate and evolve. Otherwise things can get stale. So I think it's important to constantly check in. Like, are we doing the right things? Is it the right programming? Something that worked a year ago might not work so well now anymore and you need to revisit it and adapt.
And your members don't get a kind of a vibe of features being transient and maybe flaky, so they don't invest in them. Like if you're cutting things.
No, well, you can't be flaky about it, right? Like you have to give things a real shot. We've been running the office hours for I think 6 months, and so that's a good amount of time to invest in something, test it, see if it works, and if it doesn't, then cut it. But yeah, if you like launch something and then 2 weeks later you're like, this didn't work. Then they might ask like, well, did we really give this a shot to work? Did you really put in the energy that it would take to make this work? That's not good. So of course it's a balance. You don't want to be constantly changing everything, but I think it is really healthy to be checking in consistently on your community.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes, Sasha, go for it.
I just wanted to say something to that because it's an interesting question and a good answer, obviously. I feel like sometimes it's also interesting to involve people and make them sort of part of that feature, right? So that they feel some ownership over it. And also, if it doesn't work, they'll feel it and they'll be like, yeah, maybe we'll try something else, And then it's not like you are deciding what works for them or what doesn't. They are also part of that process where they're deciding if it's a good thing or bad thing. Obviously, it makes things more complicated because you suddenly have more people to manage. But I think there is something really powerful in that. And I mean, maybe if I can ask a quick question that kind of piggybacks on that, David. What you first, hello, and thanks for being here too.
What's up?
And yeah, my thing is also my question is about this. Like, how much do you think, or do you try to involve others in the things that you're building for them, essentially, right? Like, and I think there is like a magic moment where it's just the right involvement, where it's not too much or overwhelming or chaotic, right? And I'm just wondering, how do you manage that balance?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it is 100% a balance. You can go too far and just be over listening in a way and taking way too many different opinions, or you're not considering that sometimes people don't know what they want or what they need. What they say what they want is actually not what they want. Right? For example, if you ask people how often do you want to receive email notifications or email newsletters, they'll probably say a lot less than what they're actually comfortable receiving. is what I found, right? They'll say like, oh, like once a month. I don't want more email than that. But like then you send it weekly and they love it and it's more engaging than a monthly one, right? Because they just don't know until they see it or they experience it. So there's this balance of having to, you want to be listening, you want to be bringing in voices, you want to make sure they feel heard and they feel involved in the process of making that decision. You want to make sure that you're bringing in voices that fill in your blind spots. This is a really important aspect of inclusion and diversity in your community. There are things that you can't be aware of because of who you are and your background and your experience, that you can't possibly know how someone from a different background or different experience will experience that activity. And so making sure you're bringing in voices that are helping you fill in gaps in your own knowledge and your own experience, that's helping you, if you're in a phase of ideation and you want more ideas, that's a really good point to bring in lots of people. You can set up a call. There are companies that do customer advisory boards, right? So Lyft has a customer advisory board with 7 members of their community. They rotate it every year. Those members of the community are representative of different parts of the country, and they bring them into all their big product decisions and the big changes that they make. So they're kind of like the representatives of the community. So that can be a good way of not just talking to everyone in your community, but essentially creating representatives who are the voice of the community in those decisions that you're making. And so then, yeah, you can collect all that insight and advice and ideas when you're brainstorming, but then like at some point the brainstorming has to stop and decisions have to be made. And that's probably where you need to start moving more into like, okay, I think I've gotten all the information I can get. I've gotten a diversity of opinions. I heard what the community wants. I heard what they don't want. Now, how do I merge that with what I believe is important for this community, what my vision is? Is it the same as what they're asking for? Is it maybe a little bit unique from what they're asking for? And then you need to make the decision and move forward with that. Then you test it. And that's the ultimate thing, right? Like no matter what they say they want, no matter what you think they want, at the end of the day, you have to test it and put it out there. And if you put it out there and it just doesn't work at all, then okay, then they didn't really want that. They didn't really need that. But if you put it out there and people really engage with it and it works really well, great, keep doing that and iterate on it and build on it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, David. I have one final question that I'd like to get Kevin, if he's there. Kevin, are you able to share your question?
Hi, David. I'm just starting to build a new community for sort of midlife entrepreneurs is my sort of niche that I'm going for. Sorry, I'll admit,
Nice.
if you're American. My niche I'm going for. And it's that question of like, I don't have a big customer base, I don't have an email list or anything. So it's like at the moment I've got 16 members of my Facebook group. How do I grow that without it being a kind of, farming and just trying to get loads of people to join? I just, want to grow it organically, but I'm a bit unclear about how to do it. Is it Twitter is a good place to meet people, or just being out and about and going to networking events and slowly growing a group that way? It's that sort of question.
Have you tried spamming them on social networks? That seems to work.
Okay, spamming. I thought that was
spamming.
Maybe it isn't.
If that doesn't work, okay. So okay. Yeah, I mean it's the challenge. First of all, it's a challenge that everyone has, right? It's like I have this thing. How do I grow it? The answer is not a simple one. There's no one answer. That's how you grow a community. The CMX community, in my experience, I grew that by essentially networking my ass off for 5 years, built up a really good network, and then I started just sharing my knowledge as much as possible. I was writing my own blog. I co-founded the communitymanager.com as a side project. We were sharing our advice there and our lessons. We're interviewing other people. And so we just created a lot of really good quality content that helped us build an email list. And then we launched the conference from that email list, and then things grew from there. So I kind of tapped into my network and the thought leadership I already developed. That's what worked really well for me. I love writing. I love sharing. I love teaching. I love taking complicated subjects and trying to simplify them to make it easy for others to understand. And so that's what's worked really well for me in my career, is developing thought leadership through blog posts, and Twitter has been really successful for me. I started a community called Under 30 Pro because I was right out of college. I had all these questions about being successful in my career and work, and didn't feel like there was a community that helped me with that. So I started U30 Pro. It was a Twitter chat. We were like the second Twitter chat back when people still did Twitter chats. And that grew because Twitter chats had an organic kind of growth built into it, because people tweet, other people see it, they get involved in the chat. And we did it consistently every single week, same day. We do U30 Pro chat. Then we started a Facebook group. And so we had a more consistent thing in between the weekly chats. And so again, it's just like, I kind of like just solve my own problems. If I needed a community, I built it. I invited the people I knew and just started creating really good content around it. And that's what's always worked for me. You have to figure out what works for you. Is it writing content? Is it writing a newsletter? Is it making videos? Is it just asking those 16 people that you have in there? Maybe you do a call with each of them and you say, hey, I'm trying to grow this. Do you want to grow this? And they're like, yeah, that would be great. So you say, cool, I want each of you to think of one person who's also an entrepreneur that would be a great fit for this community, and invite them to the next call and invite them to the group. Great. Now maybe half of them do that, and now you have 22 people in the group, or 24 people in the group. Okay, so now it's growing a little bit more, and you do that again and again. So you're tapping into the existing community to grow it. That can work as well, and a lot of communities will grow organically that way. But I think if you don't have an audience, it's hard. So I would focus first on building that audience through content, thought leadership, sharing knowledge, just creating value for people, and then convert that audience into community members.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying, and I suppose I've suspected this, is it's about creating content that people want to consume and is useful to them. So I have a podcast as well, and it's like developing that, also doing the YouTube versions of the podcasts. I've created one online training course, so I'm about to integrate that into it. So yeah, I suppose it's just create stuff that people need to find useful and can consume in an easy way, I suppose.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. Priya left already, but she wanted me to ask a question, maybe one last question before we all leave. So the way she phrased it is, what are the different ways to reward members in a non-monetary way? And I assume this is a way of, and she was also talking about some best practices for user-generated content from the community. So it seemed like this is a question around engagement and encouraging engagement and contribution. Do you have any final silver bullets for people?
I would probably read Dan Pink's book on motivation. I think that breaks things down in a really smart, practical way. People basically want autonomy, so giving them power and authority in the community, right? Like you hosting this call is a great example where they're like, yeah, go ahead. Like you own this, like create the call, run the interview. Great. Now you're motivated to do that because you feel ownership over it. You want it to be great. Mastery was the second one. So people want to feel like they're learning, feel like they're growing, feel like they're improving themselves.
Another tip.
The author's Dan Pink is the author. The book's called Drive. And the third one I think was like basically the purpose. That's right. So it's like remind them of why it's contributing to something that's important, what the purpose of the community is, why it's valuable. So I think those are three really good ways to intrinsically motivate people. At the end of the day, I think people, they want to improve themselves. They want to feel like they're part of something important. They're part of something special. So if they're surrounded by people who they care about their opinion and they want to rise up their social status in that space, they're going to create content. They're going to try to create value. They're going to try to contribute to the community because bringing that value is improving their status in the community. So if you have that right dynamic in the community, the right people, the right environment that they care about, then you'll start to see a lot more organic content being created.
Perfect. Great and nice, simple, concise and clear. Autonomy, mastery and purpose. That's all you need to know to get people to do stuff.
Yep, I think so.
Great. Thank you very much for your time, David. It's been super valuable, and I think everyone's got some really useful information to move forward with their community building and growing.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to help anytime. I'm in the group as well, so don't hesitate to ever tag me or message me if I could ever help with anything.
Cool. And so to finish off, for people on the call here and anyone who's going to watch the recording, this is your shameless promotion spot. What would you like to share and tell people about what you're doing now and maybe in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, you can join our community as well. Our network is all focused on community around business, around building community for organizations. So CMX Hub is our Facebook group. You can join that. Our conference is coming up in 1 month. We have scholarship programs for that as well. So if you're a member of an underrepresented group and you want to apply for a scholarship, you can get a free ticket to the events, which will be in 1 month, September 5th and 6th in Redwood City. And yeah, we have tons of content, tons of materials on cmxhub.com. That's all free. So check it out. Reach out if we can ever help with anything.
If there's one thing you would want them to read or you would point them to, is there something that you think, yeah, let's start with this if you want to really for instance, someone who's just kickstarting the community building experience?
I like books that aren't directly about community to learn about community building. So like Sapiens was one of my favorite books because it helped you understand people and why we are the way we are and why we want to connect. So that was like one of my favorite books. And I thought that was really helpful for me understanding how to organize community versus books that are like how to build community, which tend to be a little bit on the nose.
I love that book. Not a small read, but definitely very rich in how we, as Homo sapiens, have come together to do stuff.
Yeah, I'm not a fast reader, and I flew through that one, even though it's really well written. It's really interesting book.
It's fascinating. I love it. Well, thank you very much again, Dave.
The name is Sapiens again.
Sapiens.
The name.
Excellent.
Sapiens.
Brilliant.
By Yuval Noah Harari.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Dave. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call. And the next call I'm hoping is going to be with Carrie Melissa. Surname Jones. That's it. Carrie Melissa Jones, who used to work with David. So we'll be continuing these conversations and hopefully answering more questions around your community building efforts. So until next time, take care. Goodbye, everyone.